All right, welcome back. So we're jumping into the Canopy now. I've done a test run on a BattleMaster, an extra BattleMaster model I've got set aside. We're going to go for kind of a red metallic, a little bit of a fade from the top to the bottom, and yeah, a little more of like a burnt red on the top. It's more of a red, and then the recesses we've got some purples thrown in. You could use dark blues or dark like a turquoise or a green or something too if you want to, but I find purple is a nice a nice way to shade reds. The box art image we're going off of looks, it's like a clear glass canopy, kind of like a burnt orange or like a red glass, which from the lore, to my knowledge, they're basically like ferroglass sheets, and you don't actually look through them. It's sensors on the outside of the mechs that relay the information into the cockpit. So I guess it doesn't look very cannon friendly on the box of Game of Armored Combat. I could be wrong, but so we're going to do something similar on this guy. Normally I'd pick something either more of a yellow, if I was doing a metallic to contrast. Just I find like yellow metallic looks good for the Davion guard, but for this guy we're going to try and keep it as close to the box as possible. So I've got a few things laid out already. I'll kind of go over them. So this one here, this little blob, is a purple ink, and it is very strong. One of the ones we were airbrushing with earlier. So that's Intensity Violet. We're going to use that to shade down the recesses of our metallics once we get them established. Then I've got Blood Angels Contrast Red. So we're going to need to put a drop of that down on our palette. We're going to be using that for the most part to do our red shading. So put a drop there and a drop there. I always just like to have an extra one that we're mixing and diluting and thinning down to use, and then I do like having an extra one to have just in case we need to pull some clean paint from, or some undiluted paint. So I've also got so we've got the violet here. I've got two little puddles of Iron Warriors from Games Workshop. It's a foundation or a base layer paint, so it's quite thick. It's very nice metallic, but they're a little bit thick. So what I've done is I've got some in this pool here, some Vallejo metal color. I really love the Vallejo metal color line because they have such a nice actual metallic finish. Here we've got silver. Yeah, silver. You could use a chrome or a silver. I like to have one darker one brighter one, and then I mix. Generally, I'll mix a little bit of those colors into the Iron Warriors. So the Iron Warriors gives your metal a lot heavier staying power or sticking power to a flat surface. These ones, they go on quite nicely, especially in an airbrush, but they're very thin as well, so you'll get a lot of streaking if you're trying to put it straight over top of a large panel or something like that. So I generally will merge the two together for a bit of a more solid punch, I guess, on something that's a bright color or a white or a black. And then I'll pull from the pool by itself when I need to do some thinner shading. We've got our Blood Angels contrast pool is there. I've got a little bit of Cassandora yellow, an older GW shade. It's a very potent kind of yellow shade. I've got that here because I am doing two mechs kind of at the same time. I've got my test model that I've been doing in the background, and I want to get his canopy done. I was going to do it separately, but the thing is with putting shades and washes over metallics is that you really have to go about it gradually and make sure that you're letting things dry in between. So I'm just going to bounce back and forth between the two of them, and then that'll give us the time that we need between the two things. So I'm taking a bit of silver here. Otherwise, we'd just be staring at the BattleMaster and waiting for it to dry. You never want to touch it while it's tacky or it's wet, and we're doing multiple thin layers. So. Okay, so I've got I'm mixing my silver with my Iron Warriors. I've got that down here. So this will be a little bit thicker and a little bit darker silver. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to take some of the, what is that one? Burnt iron. Some of the burnt iron and mix it in with the Iron Warriors here. So this one is darker. It's going to be our kind of our base, or our base layer of metallic. So I want to get it, I'm going to go right over these little ridges. I was thinking in my head, if we were doing a kind of the very popular two-tone color scheme that Duncan had done on his painting tutorial, I see that everywhere, and it's a beautiful style of doing it. I really quite enjoy doing it on a lot of my mechs, but for this one in particular, I think it'll look a little truer to the art, or the source material art, if we do it. A metallic will look more like glass than solid lines and blending acrylic colors. Okay, and just being careful that I don't get over on the edges too much, or at all. Yeah, it's still a little bit thin. There's still a little bit of it might just be the varnish layer from previous steps, but there's a little bit of kind of separating in. Yeah, it looks fine. Actually, metallic shows up quite easily on the camera because of all the light reflecting. So we're just going to come back in, make sure we've got the bottom edges. I did my first pass, or my first attempt, kind of on the practice BattleMaster, with a kind of an old ratty brush, and I'm going to use my nicer fine-tipped ones for this one, so we get less kind of pooling at the bottom, and less scattered. Scattering along the bottom where we have our nice blue panels we want to keep. We don't want to get them dirty. Okay, so I'm going to give that a second to kind of dry and set, and we'll come back and we'll do another layer. So this is the Berserker that I've been doing kind of in the background, testing out all the different colors and the types of decals and stuff, making sure everything's good before we throw it on our BattleMaster. So again, here I'm going to be going all over the canopy. Oh, let's get that in. Just so you can see it a second time around. So the first one is nice and easy. That's the bubble canopy on the BattleMaster is excellent for. I'm actually a little bit. It's excellent for doing blends, mixing and blending colors together. So I'm a little bit sad we're not doing the two-tone or the two-color panel blending there. But when it comes to this guy, it would be a little bit rough trying to do all the tiny sub windows on this thing. I've painted a couple Victor heads, and they certainly have a lot of small inset windows. A little bit like a main medium-sized one, and then a tiny one flanked on either side of it, and they've got 9 or 10 of those over the entire cockpit assembly. So same thing as on the BattleMaster. We're just making sure we go around. We're getting in a nice even layer on all of the exposed canopy and the glass. So even we're doing the metal as well. The metal kind of crossbars, or that would be like holding the panes of ferroglass in place. All good. So we've got our base coats established. Let's jump back to the BattleMaster. Okay. So we're gonna let's just jump right to I think that looks pretty good. So what we're gonna be doing now is we're gonna I'm just checking. Nah, it looks a little spotty still. So let's continue with our Iron Warriors and our burnt iron, because I want to have a nice uniform layer. Oh, sorry, that's off camera. A nice uniform layer. I don't want to have any spots of dark blue showing through. I think that would look very ugly. Any differences in the texture or the blend from the top of the dome to down the side of the bottom of the dome, we want to be color change that we've picked out and we've established. We don't want it to be leftover blue from underneath the metal. Yeah, that looks good. Back on the Berserker, same idea. So if we had been doing this with just the Vallejo metal color, it probably would have taken us an extra pass or two just to get it perfectly covered. Oh, this guy looks better. So let's just jump right to the mix a little bit of silver with our Iron Warriors. Yeah, it's fairly thin still. So mostly we're aiming for the center of the panels. If I want to later on, I can come back and I can highlight the cross beams. I don't know if I'm going to leave them metallic or redo them metallic, or if I'll just leave them colored. In the artwork, the glass canopy has kind of ribs between the panels, but they've just maintained the same glass texture and same color, which looks fine. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to want to do until you start doing it. And it'll either feel good and you'll keep going, or you'll be hitting the brakes and saying, I don't like where this is headed. Okay, so I've got my silver and my Iron Warrior mix again here. So I'm going to be working this towards the top and the center of the canopy. So it's still a lot thinner than a regular metallic paint would be, which is what I really love about the metal color. And I'm going to do 2 passes of this as well. So I can already see that it's got a nice silver shine coming up the center of the canopy. And I would say metallic canopies in general, I'm not as much of a fan of. They have their place where you're looking for a certain effect or a certain style. But I just like the look of hand painting on a more dynamic kind of a fade or blend with acrylic colors. Mostly just because of the finish. It ends up being more of a distinct finish than the metallics can sometimes leave. And I'm going to mix this back into the Iron Warriors. When I was painting that last layer without the Iron Warriors mixed in, it was streaking quite a bit. So we'll mix them. Yeah, there you go. Much better. Oh, let's get that back in frame. Yeah, much better with the Iron Warriors in there. Okay, so we've got a nice silver established. Let's pick out our rings there. And that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So we're going to give that a second. We'll go back to the Zerker really quick. I'll leave that to kind of set, so we're not going to be pulling the silver off. And again, I am just making sure that everything's got a nice flushed out layer there. Yeah. And say also the Griffin has that bubble window with a Griffin, the Mauler, a couple of them. Problematic windows, I would say. Okay, so we need to shade it down now. So we're going to do a couple passes of our purple ink over here. We're also going to grab, this is just, I guess you could say it's like a homemade Lamia Medium from Games Workshop. It's like a matte, a little bit of matte medium, water, and some flow improver. So I'm going to drop that over here. And we'll put an extra drop over here in case we need it. You could just use water as well. I like the matte medium just because a lot of the inks and stuff that I use are fairly glossy when they dry. And it's nice to have a not glossy finish, especially when you're working under lights. Okay, and then I'm going to take some actual Lamia Medium. The reason I'm using these 2 different things is with my top layer, or the reds that we're going to be mixing, I don't want my top layer to be super matte finish. So 2 drops there, do 2 drops there. And this Lamia Medium will keep it from becoming really matte finish, whereas my homemade medium has matte medium gel mixed in with it to knock down shine. But we don't want that to happen on the topmost layer. Okay, let's mix up. I always use old brushes for mixing, just to save paint from going up in the ferrules of my nice brushes. So we've got we'll take a little tiny bit of purple. Yeah, see, I just took like just a dab and mixed it in here, and it's already quite dark. And if we need to grab some more, we can. So I'm gonna mix my Cassandora yellow, my yellow over here. It's kind of an orangey yellow. It actually shows up much more of a solid yellow over top of a layer, or layered over something. And then we've got our Blood Angels red. Let's do this one. And this is contrast paint. I will just mix it all together. And contrast as well have a fair bit of punch to them too, so we want to do multiple layers. All right. So that's all cleaned up. Let's grab a nice brush with a point on it. So this, I'm just using any size 2 brush, with a nice point to it. So I want to put a little bit of purple, of my purple ink mixture, all over the canopy here. I don't want it too runny. So I'm just going to wick a little bit off of my brush onto my paper towel on the side. And let's see, make sure you guys can see. So I'm going to be dropping that over in kind of a wash style over the whole canopy, and making sure that it sits in the crevices and the shape at the bottom of the cockpit panel. I don't want it to sit on the top if I can help it. That looks fine. It's a little thin, but it's sitting, you can see, down in the crevice there, or along the line where the blue armor plating would meet the window. That's fine. It's going to be thin the first pass. We'll probably do that 2 more times. Okay, so same idea. Generally, if I was doing a lot of yellow, I would be doing browns instead, but we're just going to see what this looks like with purple. Should be fine. Same idea. I'm just dropping it in all of the windows, and it's kind of bleeding out to the edges, leaving the middle silver, and having just a faint outline of purple in the. That's fine. Perfect. Okay, now we just gotta kind of wait a minute. Unfortunately, it does dry pretty quick, but you can still see it's a little bit wet in there. Yeah, you really don't want to paint over top of it if it's still tacky or wet. We will put a little bit more purple in, I think, though. That was a little bit overly diluted. There you go. That's definitely stronger. That looks pretty close to good. So I'm kind of painting from the middle point down into the recesses. I want it to be accumulating on these little bands, these little divider panel pieces. The more ink I put in, the more it behaves less like a wash. So again, I'm going from the mid panel down. It's easier to put in the purple now than it is to try and put it over top. Anything that we do now is going to be less apparent than it would be if we were doing it at the last step. So if we had gotten the red all tinted on there nicely, and then we came back and we did a purple over top of it, you can get it pretty close to, I don't know what the word would be, indistinguishable from the from the red. Like you don't want it to put it on and have it look blotchy, like you've got a tide line or a pool or something. Like when you all over wash a model, it's a little bit harder to make it look seamless and blended. If you put it on beforehand, it's much easier. You just put it on beforehand. You make sure you have your kind of gradient or your fade set up, and then after that, you just worry about getting a nice uniform pass of red or yellow or whatever your top color is. So pre-shading is very important when you're doing any kind of metallic. I think that looks fine. It looks fairly dark. You can see it's still silver metallic on the top parts, or it's washing off or running off the beams. Okay, and we're just about ready here. We're going to do one more pass. I really would like to have a fair amount of purple down here, just because it won't look it's not going to look black or anything too dark like that, but it will be where most of the contrast is going to come from, because we're kind of putting a uniform layer of a shade over top, like just slathering one red multiple times over the top of the canopy. We can't really get the top middle part to pop as much as you could with you're doing acrylics or blending acrylics. You could maybe do something like a gold on top of your silvers to make it a little bit warmer in the center. I gave that a shot as well on some test models, but it looked negligible. You know? Yeah, I feel like we've got a fair amount of purple established. Maybe one more pass here. Yeah, that looks good. Really, you're just looking for some striking contrast. Okay, now I'm gonna just put that brush off to the side. I'm gonna grab my metallics. Where's my brush? There you go. Just a little 000. It's an old 000. This one's quite beat up, but I use it for any kind of fine work where I'm doing metallics, just so I don't beat up or wreck my new brushes with metallic pigments. They can be a little less forgiving on your brushes, so it's nice to have two sets, or an old one and a new one. Okay, so now I'm going to be just dropping some silver in the center, so I'm just kind of dotting it in on this guy. And that's just so the color that we put over top is going to show up. And it's not going to be tinted too much by the purple that's in the outlying sections. And this again has lots of tiny little windows. Oh, that's too much. There you go. Unfortunately, it's not a process you want to rush at all. And I'm just going to repaint the cross beams as well on this guy, because they should stand out. I think that's good. Okay. So this guy, same thing. We're going to take a little bit of our silver again, mix it in with our Iron Warriors. We're just going to reinforce the top section. So let's get a good look. So you can see that it is tinted quite purple on the sides. So we've still got silver in the middle and a nice kind of purple fade. I'm just going to do a little bit of thin silver, again, pure silver on the center section, just so our red really shows up in the tops in the middle. And again, if you wanted to, you could just do the whole thing silver, maybe wash it once, maybe if you want to, or just put a clear coat over top. It's not going to look as as nice and smooth, but it'll serviceable for sure. Okay, so let's throw down our red first here. So I've got my clean sharp point brush again. Let's grab a little bit of red. I'm just going to check the on my paper towel. I'm just checking the consistency of it here. Yep, looks good. It's not flowing too much. When it goes on, I want it to stay in place. So I'm trying not to let it pool up in any one spot too much, but it doesn't really seem to. It seems to even out pretty nicely. And it'll be fairly thin because we thinned it down with the Lamia Medium. It's not as thick as a regular contrast paint would be. And now I'm just going to clean my brush off, get the water off, and I'm just going to come back in and pull up anything that's along the bottom blue panels there. I don't want there to be big pools of anything. That'll take longer to dry, and I want everything to be applied in like uniform amounts. So there's one pass already, and you can still see the purple in there. It's kind of a ready almost brown, just because it's a little bit washed out because of the silver on the top, and then purple in the recesses. You could go more with like a black or something, so it gets quite dark from the outer edge, and then as we come to the center, it's brighter. Okay, so my brush is clean. I'm gonna grab some of this Casandora yellow. I'm actually gonna mix a little bit of that with some of the we'll mix a little bit. I'd like an orange would be nice. Okay, and we'll put that again all over the metallic area, or the metallics in the cockpit area here. Okay, now I'm just going to pull the excess off of my brush on some paper towel. I'm going to come back in and wick off the extra amounts. I don't want it to be super heavy. I want to be applying nice thin layers. Actually, that looks not too bad. Yeah. That's fine. Okay, and our BattleMaster should be dry again, so back to this guy. Okay, we're going to grab some more red here. And same idea, we're going to apply from the bottom up and over. Pulling it in one direction. Yep. Nice, and it's already starting to dry on this side. So again, we still got that purple established on the bottom there, but now it's more of a red in the center. And it looks nice, really nice when it's wet, especially as it dries. It's a little more dull. Maybe we'll look at doing a gloss varnish or something on the end if we feel like we need to. Okay, and this guy here, I could probably use another layer. So we'll get it on clean brush, a little bit thin down, another layer here. So I find the much more utilitarian kind of look. It looks less fantastic looking than a lot of the BattleMech stuff that I usually paint. That's got like bright green canopies or blue or purple, you know, red, or the double contrasting colors going away from each other. In my mind, this looks not so much realistic, I guess, but yeah, definitely like a less fantastical or over the top kind of effect. Perfect. And I think we will come back in and we'll do the crossbars silver again, just to break it up on that guy. But let's double check our BattleMaster here. It's dried. I think that looks fine. You could experiment with doing silver again over top, or a gold over top and then red over top of that again, but I think this looks pretty close to the image on the box that we're looking for. So I think we'll call it done there. Next we will be doing I'm going to do a gray, I think, on the PVC casing. His hands are blue. The metallics and the recesses are kind of a dark black metallic, so we've already got some different colors to add there. And then the hands don't really stand out very much. So yeah, we'll jump into the next one right away here.